Welcome to Behind the Mic with Kirkus Reviews, where the subjects are audiobooks and the actors who narrate them. I'm Rachel Reid, and joining me today is the fiction editor for Kirkus Reviews, Lori Muchnick. Welcome, Lori.
Hi, Joe. It's great to be here.
We are doing something a little bit different because you've chosen to talk about a book series. So share that with us because it's a very hot series.
Yes, I'm going to talk about the Game Changer series by Rachel Reid, which is the basis for Heated Rivalry, of course, the very hot, as you said, HBO series. The series is made up of 6 books, and one of the things that is interesting for us to talk about is that the series is narrated by 2 different people. The first 3 books in the series, which are Game Changer, Tough Guy, and Heated Rivalry, are narrated by Tor Thom. And the last 3 books in the series, which are Common Goal, Role Model, and The Long Game, are narrated by Cooper North.
And I know you wanted to take one book by each narrator as sort of a compare and contrast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what are they?
For people who aren't big romance readers, you might not realize that a lot of romances are written in series, and you don't necessarily have to read them in order. They're mostly standalones, although, they have characters who pop in and out of each other's books, but I am a bit of a rule follower, so I like to start at the beginning. So the first book in the series is what I decided to talk about, and that is Game Changer. It features Scott Hunter and Kip Grady, who, if you are, as I think probably many, many people are, fans of the television series, they're the other couple other than Shane and Ilya who appear in the series. Scott is a hockey superstar, the captain of the New York Admirals, and he has been deeply in the closet for many years. He's lonely, he's never really had a relationship, and he walks one day into a smoothie store, and Kip is the barista who serves him a smoothie, and things happen, and they fall in love. And at the end of the day, at the end of the episode, without really planning to, Scott and the Admirals win the Stanley Cup, and Scott decides to give Kip a big kiss in the middle of the ice on television and come out in front of the entire world. And, it's extremely romantic. And I don't really think that I'm being too spoilery, because if you don't know this yet,
it is a moment. Let's put it that way. I mean, it really is an aw moment.
It's an incredible moment, and it's a moment that has reverberations throughout the whole rest of this series, which is why, the book is called Game Changer.
Well, these books sit squarely in the romantic genre. So let me ask you, what do they deliver that feels true to romance conventions, and where do they kind of stretch or deepen it?
Well, the romance convention, of course, the number one romance convention of all time is that there's always going to be a happily ever after. That's why I didn't really feel bad giving away the fact that they're going to live happily ever after at the end of this book, because that that's going to happen.
It's like a mystery. They're going to catch the murderer.
Exactly. That that's going to happen.
Right. These books have a very big amount of sex in them. Is that unusual for a romance novel? I mean, obviously, we're not reading my mother's romance novels anymore, and it's not a genre I really read into. So I was really very surprised at how much sex is in these books. And is that usual, or is it like mysteries where there are cozy mysteries and people are politely murdered, and then there are, much more graphic mysteries?
Yeah, that's a great question. Romance novels have a whole range of sex. I mean, this is certainly it's not like the outer boundary. I think that ever since 50 Shades of Grey, people have been aware of the fact that there are romance novels with a lot of sex in them. These novels are squarely in the camp of plenty of sex. they're not beyond the outer boundary. There are certainly novels that have more transgressive sex. This falls in the camp of, a lot of sex, I think, but a normal amount of sex for a very spicy romance novel.
Okay.
Romance readers have like a spice scale, and people who know where to look can find out like how much spice is in the romance novel, and they know what they want to look for, and they know where they can find out how much is in there.
Well, Rachel Reid has on her website, literally, it's the banner across her homepage. I like to write cute smut about hockey players and other people. Cute smut is one way of characterizing this, but I kind of think she's underselling herself too, because she really creates whole characters here.
Absolutely. Her novels, I mean, she's got really heartwarming romances, but she deals with issues of, obviously, homophobia in the hockey world, but also all kinds of issues of mental illness and depression and anxiety in the different books. Each one addresses a different issue. One of the books has a really big, burly hockey player whose job on the ice is to sort of be the enforcer, the person who's like 6'6" and huge and just, fights with the person on the other team. But in his sort of personal life, he's like really afraid of flying and racked with anxiety.
Mm.
So you see mental health issues and things that are going on in the lives of these men who you just see their facades in real life. So she's dealing with a lot of interesting issues.
It's interesting because she's been a hockey fan forever. She's Canadian. She really wanted to challenge what she saw as a homophobic
Yeah.
culture in hockey. And I think she really does challenge it in these books.
Yeah. I think that Rachel Reid, as a hockey fan, may be creating an idealized hockey world that she would like to exist. I mean, the surface level of her books is that all of these hockey players are afraid to come out because of homophobia in the hockey world. But of course, these being romances, when they do finally come out, only nice things happen, pretty much. At the end of the day, everybody has their romance, and everybody comes out, and everybody is supportive. And at the end of the series, they've kind of created a community of queer hockey players who kind of get together. Scott Hunter, from the first book, by the time a few books have gone by, Scott has bought a gay bar in Manhattan. And all of the other hockey players, like when they're in New York to play, they hang out at the gay bar that is owned by their friend Scott Hunter. So it's a kind of idealized world of hockey players. And everybody kind of talks about and acknowledges the fact that they may be, there are only like 4 or 5 of them. There aren't actually very many queer hockey players in professional hockey, but we're seeing all of them in this series. So it feels like a lot. It's just a very idealized world.
Well, we've been skirting around it, so let's talk about the narrator since we are talking about audiobooks.
Oh,
So,
yes, of course.
so Game Changer, which, as you said, is about Scott Hunter, who
Yes.
falls in love with barista Kip Grady, is narrated by Tor Thom. What did you think about his narration?
Here's the bad news. Tor Thom, the part where he's just telling the story, I enjoyed. He has a very intimate style and he really pulls you in, but then he just makes some really weird choices when it comes to characters and their voices, particularly when it comes to Kip. Kip lives in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and Tor Thom, ugh, he just must have had this thought like, New York accent, what does it sound like? And I don't know if he's never been to New York or I don't know what, but this voice just sounded like some kind of combination of, I don't know, sometimes it sounded like he was from Boston. Sometimes it just sounded like he had
Yep.
a mouthful of marbles because it just didn't it didn't hold together, and it just he was talking very slowly, and he just sounded
And he lowered his voice too.
he lowered his voice, and it was just a mishmash and terrible, really bad.
What I found odd is I actually liked the narrative voice he has.
Yeah, I did too.
And I actually thought he did Scott, the other main character, really well.
Yes, I
So when it
agree.
came to Kip, where I was listening and I had no idea where he was from, at one point I thought, is this Australia?
I
And then I
know.
thought, Boston? And then I only knew it was New York because he lived with his parents in New York. And I thought, I'm from New York. We don't sound that way.
Yeah,
Nobody sounds that way.
no.
It was so surprising. And I really wondered, honestly, there was no one to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, the book came out in 2018, so maybe Tor Thom was at the beginning of his career, and maybe
He's narrated 600 books, which is a lot. He mostly does fantasy and romance,
interesting.
and neither of them are my genre. It's baffling, is what it is. So, why don't we hear a little bit? This is from Game Changer.
This is right at the beginning. This is Scott walking into the smoothie shop and meeting Kip right at the beginning.
This is Tor Thom reading Game Changer by Rachel Reid.
Kip's cheeks flushed. He dipped his head a bit so the brim of the stupid baseball cap would conceal it. God, the hottest man in the world is standing in front of me, and I'm wearing an apron and a strawberry baseball cap. You didn't. I wasn't. Kip took a breath. Pull it together. Sorry. Had a bit too much fun last night. The man raised an eyebrow. On a Monday night? Yeah, well, you know the life of a smoothie maker. Live fast, die young, right? The man laughed. Kip nearly fell over. So what's good here? The man asked, squinting at the menu. There's one with blueberries and pineapple and kale, but you can't taste the kale, I swear. It's good. I like it. That would be the Blue Moon over Brooklyn? Yeah. All the names here are kind of dumb. The man pointed a long finger at Kip's name tag. I like your name. Kip glanced at his own name on the tag, as if he didn't know what it said. Like an idiot.
I think this is a great example of his fail with Kip and also how good he is with Scott and the narrative. Listening, like reading, is very individual. And maybe it's us, Lori. And I'm perfectly willing to own that. But I was so sorry to hear Kip's voice like that because I thought he really sold the rest of the book so well.
I agree. And it didn't make me stop listening to the book, because I was enjoying so much of the rest of it. So it wasn't like a do not finish situation for me, but
Did it pull you out of the listening experience?
it did, but
Yeah, me
I
too.
kept going. I
No,
persevered.
no, that's exactly what it was for me. I would just say, "Ay," and then Scott would come back and would
Yeah.
be so sweet.
Because Scott's voice, it was so, he just sounded so soft and nice. He didn't sound like a stereotypical hockey player. And I kind of loved that. I loved Scott's soft, almost sort of breathy voice. I did like Scott's voice a lot.
I did too, and again, that narrative voice, which is so important.
Yeah.
I thought he did really well. So, choices are choices.
Mm.
And as you mentioned, the series switches narrators midway through from Tor Thom to Cooper North. And that's a big shift. So, in terms of the listening experience, because you listened to all six, how did that change the tone of the books for you?
There was something very confiding about it, I thought. Cooper North's style was lighter, like he was telling you a story. I thought that he really brought out the humor in the books a lot, but he also brought out the poignancy in The Long Game, which is the sequel to Heated Rivalry. I think there are going to be some spoilers in our discussion for what's probably going to happen in season 2 of the TV series. In the TV series, Shane came up with this plan that Ilya will transfer to the Ottawa hockey team, so he is living only a couple of hours away from Shane, and they're going to start a charity together so that people will know they're friends. So all of this has happened in the long game.
And we can keep it kind of vague, so we don't have to have too many spoilers.
We can keep it kind of vague. But Ilya is still, he's a little bit troubled. I think more than Shane, is troubled by having to keep their relationship secret. And Cooper North really brings out both his yearning and his depth, I think, as well as Shane's more straightforward character. He doesn't focus as much on Ilya's Russian accent. He doesn't do the accents. He doesn't hit as hard, I think, on differentiating the accents as much as Tor Thom does, but he brings a lot of emotion to the voices.
Oh, I thought Ilya certainly had a Russian accent.
Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah,
he
in the
does, but
long
they're
game.
not as cartoonish.
I think in the long game, Ilya is more vulnerable than Shane because he
Yes.
doesn't have a family. He's really playing for a second-tier team.
Yeah.
And he's also really struggling with being an immigrant and wanting to become a Canadian citizen. And that's where I thought Cooper was so good at holding that tension between Ilya's cocky confidence and this growing despair.
Well, one thing that I found really interesting about the audiobook that wouldn't have come through in reading a paper book is that Ilya, this might be a bit of a spoiler, Ilya actually decided to go see a therapist. And so he found a Russian speaking therapist. So he was speaking Russian to this therapist. And while he was speaking to the therapist, Cooper North didn't use a Russian accent for
Which
Ilya
I
or the
loved.
therapist, because of course, when they're speaking Russian, they don't have an accent,
Completely. And that makes me crazy when I see
Yeah.
films that do that. They're in Germany, they're speaking German, but they have
Right,
German
that doesn't make
accents.
sense.
It's like, are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Yes. I loved that. Thank
Yeah.
you for pointing that out.
I thought that was a really good choice, and you wouldn't have gotten that experience while reading the book on paper. So
That's right. What I really like, it was really good after listening to Heated Rivalry and then listening to the long game and coming back to Ilya and Shane, how they grew as characters while still remaining themselves. I mean, she is a good writer.
absolutely. And seeing how they had a happily, well, in romance, you can have a happily ever after, or you can also have what the romance community calls a happily for now. Heated Rival really ended with a happily for now. They're set off onto their lives together, but there's still so many unanswered questions. And then the long game is really, they're still hiding their relationship, and there's so many things to work out, and there's so much growing to do while they work out, how they're going to live the rest of their lives together, and growing together, and their relationship has to grow together. It's really insightful, and Rachel Reid just gives these characters so much depth, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Why don't we hear a little bit? Do you want to set this up for us?
Close to the beginning of the book, Shane and Ilya are discussing how very few people know about their relationship at this point. Shane's parents know, one or two people know, but they're discussing whether they should tell their agent. They have the same agent at this point, and they're discussing whether they should tell her.
Okay, here we go. This is The Long Game by Rachel Reid, read by Cooper North.
We could tell her, maybe, Ilya said. Tell her what? About us. What? Today? Now? Despite the summer heat and his blood still churned up from the run, Shane suddenly felt icy cold. Ilya shrugged easily. She probably knows already. The panic alarm that lived inside Shane started blaring. Why would she? We are together at your cottage. You are gay. I am hot. It's a bit soon. We should talk about it more, figure out how to word it, and... Ilya was gazing at him with a mixture of fondness and exasperation. "Is not complicated, and if she does not support us, then she should not be our agent." Shane chewed his lip, considering the undeniable truth of that. "She'll support us." "I know. So we tell her."
I think he's so good, and so good at capturing the personalities that Rachel Reid has written about so effectively and in such depth. Lori, thank you. Thank you for suggesting that we talk about this series, and thank you for giving me your time.
Thank you.
That was Lori Muchnick. She is fiction editor at Kirkus Reviews. You've been listening to Behind the Mic. Behind the Mic drops on Thursdays, and if you follow us, we will simply appear in your feed. And while you're at it, follow Fully Booked by Kirkus Reviews. Fully Booked is the podcast for book lovers. Every Tuesday, Megan LaBreeze brings you author interviews, industry insights, and recommendations from the bestseller list. Find your next great book on Fully Booked by Kirkus Reviews. You can follow Fully Booked and Behind the Mic on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or wherever you get your podcasts. And then stop by kirkusreviews.com, where you can check out reviews for both print and audiobooks. Behind the Mic is produced by Jessica Lockhart. Michelle Cobb, Stephen Cummings, Leslie Fine, Alan Minskoff, Alex Ritchie, Laura Rossi, and Kendra Winchester are our contributors. Jennifer Dow is our editor, with an assist from Alicia Langerman. Tom Beer is the executive producer. The music is William Ross Chernoff's Nomads 4-Way. And I'm your host, Joe Reed. Good listening.